Body Politics Unveiled, evaluating the clash of identities among resolute women and Islamic State. In 2022, a Kurdish Iranian girl called Mahsa Amini was killed while she was in custody of police for her improper hijab that sparked a national uprising in Iran. Women were the leaders of this protest, and they took off their hijab to show opposition to the mandatory hijab. Islamic states enforce a wide-ranging scope of violence against them. Why does controlling women's bodies hold such significance for Islamic State? Historical background. Iran is a Muslim country that has experienced both mandatory unveiling in the time of monarchy and mandatory veiling in the Islamic era. Mandatory unveiling was aimed at secularization and modernization of the country. Following the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini's decree for the compulsory hijab transformed women's body into an ideological battleground. He labeled unveiled women as West-toxicated, modernist, and pro-monarchy, sparking mass demonstration by women. As you can see in the right picture, housewife women with hijab presented as ideal women by the Islamic State. And as you can see in the left picture, the morality police guidance patrol control and stop women on the street for their hijab. In 2017, Vida Movahed sparked the Girl of Inqilab Street movement by waving her headscarf on a stick during national protest against Iran's economic policies. Her act symbolized resistance to compulsory hijab and drew the attention of protesters to the importance of women's rights. The Women Life Freedom movement marked one of the most radical moments in a century of Iranian women's struggle for their rights. Women publicly burned their scarves, cut their hair, broke long-standing Islamic taboos, and emerged as the driving force behind the protests. The Islamic regime employed systematic and extreme measures of violence against protesters, including widespread detention, sexual violence, and targeted physical assaults such as firing shotguns at women's breasts, genital regions, and eyes. Research questions: how do deviant female individuals' identity ideologically clash with the Islamic State's identity? What are the state's positioned gendered strategies for resubjectifying and reassimilating non-normative female bodies? Third research question: what are the counter-hegemonic acts of female political activists to target the hyper-masculinist identity of the Islamic State? Thesis statement: the Iranian state has strategically enforced gendered policies to re-subjectify the female resolute bodies and reproduce its Islamic identity. And in response, resolute women countered these attempts through acts of resistance. Religiously, women, represented by Eve, are the ones who ate the forbidden fruit and brought humanity into a chaotic world far from heaven. This misogynistic notion appears in both classical and modern Islamic texts, depicting women as disruptors of social order who must be controlled by a wiser man. According to David Campbell's critical security approach, I will analyze how the state authorizes and labels women as enemies for the purpose of defining and reinforcing its Islamic identity. The state's identity is so intertwined with women's that any deviation is known to be an anti-statist act and security issue. Unveiled women, labeled as West-toxicated, are equated with foreign enemies and seen as threats to the state's true identity. To uphold its hyper-masculine identity, the Islamic State portrays these women as hyper-feminine others who are threatening its hegemonic masculinity. According to Wilcox's theory, I will argue how resolute bodies of women can challenge the state's hegemonic norms by practicing their own norms through daily acts of resistance, such as unveiling their head as a civil disobedience, female political activist hunger strike strategy in prison, and pursuing education seriously. Cox argues state reasserts its sovereignty through resubjectifying resolute bodies. In this project, I will examine how the Islamic State seeks to erase the true self of such defiant bodies through practices such as forced confession, solitary confinement, and torture, which are called white torture. Nagis Mohammadi is an Iranian human rights activist, journalist, and Nobel Peace Prize winner. Her book White Torture is particularly known for addressing state-sanctioned violence and torture, especially the tactic of white torture or prolonged solitary confinement, which she has described as a mean of psychological abuse to break prisoner spirits. The aim of white torture is to permanently break the connection between a person's body and mind in order to force the individual to recant their ethics in action. I will argue that this tactic is designed to re-subjectify the abject bodies of women in prison and turn them into a docile ideal Muslim women, a sort of self-alienation. Iranian women use hunger strikes to assert control over their bodies in prison. They reclaim agency in the face of Islamic structures and tortures that seek to control and exploit their bodies. This form of protest challenged the state's or society's authority over their physical autonomy. Iranian resolute women use a range of resilient counter-hegemonic acts to counter the state's gendered policies aimed at re-subjectifying them. Through hunger strikes, reading, petitioning in prison, uncovering their hair in public, they transform their bodies from sites of punishment into sites of resistance.